It's something you can grow into. So I think you have to have a growth mindset and not be limited by what you've done in your background. That being said, I mean, there's some people whose personality types, they probably shouldn't be a business owner. I'm not saying that everyone should be a business owner, but I'd say there's probably more sitting on the sidelines talking about business ownership. We call them wanna-preneurs, right? Instead of entrepreneurs. They talk about it, they consume a lot of content, but they don't get off the couch and actually go take a step into it. And so I do think that's the majority of people. I think they have it in them. They just need that system. They need the guidelines. They need to go out and execute them.
Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm your host, Aaron Hale, and this is Point of Impact. Are you trying to break free from the 9-to-5 grind? You want a little autonomy, a little time freedom, financial freedom. Try to escape that rat race and really get a hold on that wealth you can create for yourself. A side hustle just doesn't cut it. It doesn't fit your timeline, your goals. But neither does building a small business from the ground up have any appeal to you. Well, our guest today, Jon Ostenson, may have the alternative for you in franchises. He's an educator, podcaster, author, and he's an owner of and broker of franchises, non-food related, to be specific, non-food franchises. But what franchise or business is right for me, for my market? What options are there? How you might be answering these questions and a whole bunch more. Like, how do you finance these franchises? How do you lead and manage and operate the franchises? What are the responsibilities of the franchisee versus the franchisor? Franchisor. Anyways, Jon's going to answer all those questions and a whole bunch more. He's going to do it right now. Jon, welcome to the Point of Impact.
Aaron, thanks for having me.
Well, I've been really excited to have you on. Franchising is something I've been very interested in. Maybe it's intrigued by it. I've heard all sorts of things about it, but it wasn't my chosen entrepreneurial path, investment path. I'm a real estate guy by heart, nature, I guess. But I've met people from the franchise world, spoken with them, and always been curious about a few things. So I'm really glad to have you on. And first I'd like to ask how you got into franchise business, and explain the whole. You're all about non-food franchise.
That's right. I wrote a book called Non-Food Franchising, which I'm happy to share with all of your listeners, by the way, if they come out to our website. So, no, I stumbled into franchising. I spent many years in the corporate world, like many of your listeners. And about 8 years ago, I had the opportunity to step in and serve as president of Shelf Genie franchise system. It was a fast-growing franchise all across the U.S. and had the opportunity to support new business owners day in, day out. And for me, that was the light bulb moment where I fell in love with the franchise model and just saw how it allowed so many people to step into business ownership from a variety of backgrounds. So long story short, after some time there, I ended up partnering with the founder. We spun off. We've invested in franchises ourselves. And I've done some of that independently too. So I'm a multi-brand franchisee. So I've been on both sides of the table. And now, we've got good people involved in our businesses, and allows me to spend most of my time helping other entrepreneurs and investors around the country get plugged in and identify the top opportunities in their market for what they're looking to do. You can essentially think of me as a real estate broker, but for franchises. And so we work with over 600 franchises that are, in growth mode, looking to expand, that still have market availability to expand into. And as far as the non-food, I've got nothing against the food guys. We need them. We support them. Some of them do very well. It's just my humble belief, based on what I've seen and based on my own experience, that I believe there are easier ways to make money.
I tell you what, I was reading, it's a bit dated now, but reading 4 Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss. There was something you mentioned in there about if he had to do it over again, he wouldn't do a consumable business, because he started in supplements. Just too much liability there. There's freshness, shelf stability. There's a lot of other responsibilities there that involved in something you have to consume, or the customer has to consume. Of course, this was after I started a fudge business. So it's like, oh, you know what? That makes sense, and it is a pain in the ass. No, but I like food. Anyways, when it comes to franchising and you as a consultant, uh, do you help others find the right franchise to invest in, and it's kind of like buying a business in a box, right? How do you is there what kind of metrics do you look for? How do you match a certain investor, customer with the right franchise?
Yeah. So if you came to me, Aaron, as an example, and said, "Hey, I'm interested in dipping my toe in the water and exploring the world of franchising," I'd provide you certainly education throughout the process, but would get to know you and then in a pretty streamlined fashion present opportunities to you that, hey, if I'm in your shoes, based on what you shared with me, based on what we're seeing in the market, based on our relationships behind the scenes, because if you just Google around, there's a lot of noise out there, right? Every company's trying to put their best foot forward, and it's important to understand what's going on behind the scenes. So, we use criteria like, the profit model's got to be there. Check our boxes, competitive advantages. What are current owners in the system saying about their experience? What does that leadership team look like? Do they have industry and franchise experience represented? So, once we start combining these, combined with what our clients looking to do, combined with what's available in the market, which is oftentimes the biggest challenge because things move really fast. Once we apply those filters, it usually narrows this down to somewhere in the ballpark of, I'd say, 10 or 12 opportunities that if I'm in your shoes, here are the ones in the market that I'd want to be looking at. So we take them through a very streamlined process of introducing those to them, and they would ultimately select a few to have conversations with, and we would hold their hand through the process and provide them with funding resources, connections, or franchise attorney to review the agreement, or a recruiter to find key personnel. We've got an ecosystem that can support them as they launch that business. And so, yeah, absolutely love what I get to do. I get to interact with just great people. And what I found is most people have an entrepreneurial drive in them. Some have stifled it, some have ignored it, but they're a lot of people want to be business owners. There's this American desire to build your own empire instead of someone else's. And I love helping them connect the dots, because most of them come to me, and I have these conversations every day. Hey, Jon, I really want to be a business owner. I know a little bit about franchising, but I don't know what I'm looking for. And so love supporting them through the process.
Yeah, it reminds me of just down the road here in Destin, Florida. The brought the kids over to, I think it was like Harvard Town, or what are the shopping areas. I stepped into this little shop, and it was a popcorn shop, dozens of different flavors of popcorn, ridiculously overpriced. But it's a tourist area. But I got talking with the people behind the counter, and it was a retired Marine and his wife, and it just said, after she followed, I dragged her around the world for 20 years. She made me promise that I'd buy her a franchise, and then ended up with this popcorn stand, and they both seemed very happy to doing this. And there's no doubt that thing was making money in the high traffic area that it was. But it's interesting how it's curious how the certain person finds a certain franchise, a business type. So
and I would say the popcorn's probably a little too trendy for me, right? I mean, that's one of the things I don't like about food. I mean, frozen yogurt, froyo, was popular till it wasn't, right? Consumers' whims and tastes change over time. And, again, a lot of our clients end up in businesses where they don't even have a customer-facing retail storefront. Maybe it's more of a service business. Think home and property services, everything from those may be non-sexy industries, but gosh, I mean, you're always going to need restoration services or roofing or paint or flooring, insulation, things you don't think of. And then it's things like health and wellness. And there's some pretty unique ones in that space, but there's so much interest in health and wellness in the market. And then categories like kids or pets or seniors, you think about what will people spend on regardless of the economy. And that's really the theme I'd say out there with our clients is, hey, we don't want sexy, we don't want trendy. Give us the understandable cash flowing businesses that won't be disrupted tomorrow by AI or Amazon, right? So that's kind of the world that we live in. So I'd say popcorn's even on the fringe of that for me, right? That's I'm glad they're doing well. That's probably not one that most of our clients would steer down the path of, but it's a great example because you see these different backgrounds and they wouldn't have gone out and started it on their own, right? They needed that help. And like you said, business in a box.
It sounds like you could go in, I mean, so many different directions with franchises within that franchise realm. Even when you consider, like a growth versus value stocks, there's also the new and trendy versus the tried and true. So, is there, as a happy medium, are there ways to follow market demand? And what are you seeing lately that is up and coming but has a good model for future revenue?
Yeah, there's certainly science and art to helping to match people, and it's entirely free to work with us. So it's a lot of fun for us to get to take clients through this no obligation process on their end. But no, one of the hottest ones, I don't like using the word hot, but one of the more popular ones over the past year was one that operated in men's health. It's testosterone replacement therapy and hormone replacement. There's some variations of that with some other companies out there that are doing well too. So that was a big one. In-home senior care. It's a crowded space. There's a lot of competition, but there's such a macro need in the market. And so if you're able to differentiate yourself within that world, we've been doing a lot with clients there. It's categories like youth soccer. That's probably not top of mind, but when you think about like youth soccer clinics, camps, sports leagues, soccer's never been more popular. It's businesses like we've had a bunch of clients buy into business. It's almost an equipment rental business where they use temporary walls around, like containment walls around renovation projects and in renovation sites, things you don't think of, all these different niches. And it's a lot of fun for me because probably 90% of our clients end up purchasing something that was never, the industry wasn't even on their radar. And so they come to us fairly open-minded and we give them a good variety to evaluate. And ultimately, I mean, we see doctors and lawyers and existing business owners and past corporate executives, saying, hey, I never thought about getting into fencing, but gosh, I really like the revenue numbers on this. And I like my role in the business. That would be networking. I'm not out there digging holes, putting fences in, but man, if I can make this kind of money and doing what I enjoy doing, getting involved in the Chamber of Commerce and sponsoring the Little League baseball team and kind of creating a name for us there in the community with the franchisor's support, it opens up their world.
Yeah, what? Can you expand a little bit on the health and wellness side? I know that is a huge industry, like the testosterone supplementation replacement, or I think I've heard of this group fitness centers where you're training as almost like a team. Are these the good models, and how do you tell? What are the metrics you look at to find out if it's something that's worth investing in?
Right. As part of it's science and an art. What is your background? What does the market need around you? Because some markets aren't a good fit for for a higher end concept, let's say, or maybe there's seasonality to it. But no, we're very bullish on the health and wellness space. You do have a lot of companies that maybe haven't been around forever in that space. Now you've got the Club Pilates and the Pure Bars, some of those massive groups, but I'd say the majority of them are, hey, maybe they brought on 75 franchisees over the past 2 years, and they had built a model before that, and now they're franchising. And so you do have newer models. And frankly, to get good territory, oftentimes it does have to be a newer one, or else it's already sold out. So as far as metrics go, I mean, we're looking at, obviously the profitability side. I mean, how much are you potentially making for what you put in? And the nice thing about franchising is you get an FDD. It's got what's called an item 19, where it shows you their historical revenue and in a lot of cases profit too. You also get some information from existing franchisees during the exploration process. You can ask them questions and hear about their ramp up and experience. So the goal is to get you armed with as much information as possible going through the process so that you can ultimately make the right decision. But I'd say, we look at revenue, we look at profitability, we look at what is that return for what you're investing in the business. If it's a small sample size of historical performance, because it is a newer one, we just want to make sure there's a lot of meat on the bone. So even if we take a conservative approach, we want to see that the potential is there and still an attractive return.
What are some of the most common misconceptions for those that are just getting started in their search for a franchise, or maybe for example, there's maybe the biggest challenges they face in the first year?
Yeah. I'd say, kind of even taking a step back, a lot of people come to us and say, hey, we've been looking at existing businesses for the past 2 years, 3 years. We can't find what we're looking for. Like, it's a needle in a haystack, because, once they do the due diligence, there's always going to be some degree of risk in buying an existing business, because you're paying a premium, a higher multiple, assuming everything's going to continue to go as planned, right? But whenever you have a change in ownership, you could lose key personnel or key customers. So I think oftentimes people overlook that risk and they say, gosh, I'd love to just step into something that's cash flowing already. Most of those we work with end up buying a franchise instead, where they say, wait a minute, I do have to get it off the ground, but the franchisor has gotten it off the ground in a lot of other markets, and they're going to really support me through that process. I'd say that the misconceptions, or kind of what it comes down to, when I was a franchisor at Shelf Genie and I looked across our owners all across North America, who were our top performers? Who were those that were kind of, middle of the pack? Who were those that were trailing a little bit? It sounds cliche to say, but there's really two key things. It's one, you've got to be decent with people, right? You've got to be someone that people want to work for, want to work with, whether that's clients, whether that's vendors, whether that's a franchisor. So you've got to be, and that's just business 101, right? Secondly, you've got to follow the system and be willing to say, hey, I'm not going to try to be the smartest guy in the room and do everything my way. There's a reason why I bought into a franchise. Now I'm going to go out and execute what they tell me. Most of our clients do very well. We've had a few that, ultimately did not do well. And the feedback I got from the franchisor in those cases, the common theme, and this is a small group, there aren't very many of them, but the franchisor said, they weren't willing to follow the system. We came in, we coached them, we did everything we can, but ultimately they've got to follow the playbook or else they're going to get in trouble. And that's what happened. They went off the rails and, tried to, do different things marketing wise, and, just weren't following kind of what's been proven out.
What about the passive versus active? I know there are various franchisees that require a certain level of involvement by their franchisors. For example, I don't know, this is a food related, but any Chick-fil-A owner has to also be manager. What about, are there any that are, I wouldn't say truly passive, but virtually passive investments?
Yeah, there are a couple that would be truly passive. There's one I'm invested in down in Delray Beach, Florida, that's truly passive. They're few. When I say they're few and far between, they're extremely few and far between. So, and that's kind of a unique one in that it has been totally hands off in our first year of operating it. The franchisor is running it for us. Most businesses, a franchisor would love for you to step in as an owner operator, right? Running the business day one, because no one's going to be as incentivized as the guy with the skin in the game to go out and be successful. That being said, I'd say probably 75% of the companies we work with allow for what we call a semi-passive model. And that's where you put a manager in place day one. You can keep your day job. If you have a good franchisor on the sidelines supporting that manager, they can really carry a lot of the support water for you on a day-to-day basis. So it's not all coming back to you. But the key to that approach is having a good operator, good manager in place running the business. If you don't have a good one, you're going to find yourself leaning in more than you expected. However, if you've got a great one and you've incentivized them correctly, we just have case study after case study of clients that have done that, right, and been successful. So, I've started calling it probably semi-involved is better than semi-passive, because, if you're a business owner, you're not going to want to be totally passive. You're going to want to have some hand in the business. But there are definitely some models out there that lend themselves more towards that truly semi-passive approach versus others that may market themselves that way.
What about those personality types for investors that maybe they're afraid that they don't have the leadership skills or maybe people management skills? Are there franchise opportunities for them as well?
There are. I'd say most people come to us and say, "Hey, we want the highest return on investment with the fewest number of employees. We don't want to have to deal with people, because we've never led a large team, let's say." It's something you can grow into. So I think you have to have a growth mindset and not be limited by what you've done in your background. That being said, there's some people whose personality types, they probably shouldn't be a business owner. I'm not saying that everyone should be a business owner, but I'd say there's probably more sitting on the sidelines talking about business ownership. We call them wannapreneurs, right? Instead of entrepreneurs. They talk about it, they consume a lot of content, but they don't get off the couch and actually go take a step into it. And so I do think that's the majority of people. I think they have it in them. They just need that system. They need the guidelines. They need to go out and execute. Military guys like yourself, veterans, just franchising loves them because you guys go out and follow a playbook, and it's all about execution, right? And so they've made great franchisees in the past. So I'd say that one interesting point, a lot of business owners step into franchising, existing business owners. Some of them are too entrepreneurial. I give a lot of talks to groups like that. And I say, some of you are too entrepreneurial. You're the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room you're in, it's not for you. But so many of them say, "Hey, I remember all the hard work that it took to get my first business off the ground. I would much rather start on third base where a lot of things have been figured out already, and I can step into it. And I know there's product market fit because it's been proven out. It's just about going out and executing what the franchisor tells me."
Yeah, I love that growth mindset perspective. You may not have the skills, but it seems as though that eagerness, the willingness to learn, pick up some new skills, and franchise versus starting your own business from the ground up is probably a better option for those that want to learn, because you've already got these standards and guide rails in place. So I like that mindset. What about some of those hurdles that new franchise investors run into over maybe in the first year?
I won't sugarcoat it. Standing up a business takes work, and it's not. There's going to be surprises. There's going to be things you didn't expect, whether it be on the employee side, whether it be on the customer side. Business ownership isn't for the faint of heart, right? It takes work. And so I don't want people to ever come in and say, "Hey, because it's a franchise, it's not going to be that hard." It's still hard, right? And, I'd say really that's what it comes down to. Oftentimes it is either the labor side or the customer side, the demand side in the market. But if you've done your due diligence through the process, going in and talking to other owners living the same thing day in, day out, there's this amazing community within franchises where you're exchanging best practices with these other people that are running the same business as you. Talk about a mastermind. It's not coming at it from different industries, but it's coming at it from, "Hey, we tried this tactic. Hey, we found great employees when we started fishing over here." I've just seen it firsthand time and time again that you can, be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, right? And it's not just you have the franchisor in your corner, but you also have other franchisees that you can learn from. You also get the opportunity to potentially acquire their businesses down the line, or they can acquire yours. There's a lot of built-in M&A transactions that take place within the franchise system. as well. But yeah, I'd say ultimately, from it to kind of circle back to your question, the challenges that you would have in the first year of a franchise are very similar to the challenges you would have in the first year with starting up a business, except that you have that confidence, you have that light at the end of the tunnel because there's product market fit, that this business has worked elsewhere. So that's kind of what keeps you going through those hard times, versus oftentimes with a startup you're like, gosh, is the model what I thought it was?
What kind of seed investment are we talking about? What's the buy-in for some of these franchises?
Yeah, when you look at the franchise fee plus the startup cost plus a couple months of working capital all built in, it's what we call the item 7 within that FDD, the franchise disclosure document. I mean, certainly some of our clients are getting into things that are 7 figures and above, but most of them are getting into businesses that may be service-based businesses, or what I call a retail light, not huge build outs. A lot of them are getting into things where they're all in investments between 150,000 and maybe 400,000, somewhere in that range. Quite a few right around that $200,000 mark. Some are paying cash, most are not. Most will put maybe 50,000 in cash in, and then they use an SBA loan to leverage the rest. SBA lenders, banks and institutions love franchising because it is so much more predictable, right? And so, those are very, very common, and we've got partners that help our clients with those. Some people will use an old retirement plan, 401k or IRA. They'll roll it over and use what's called a ROBS program to actually, not have the tax implications and such. Certainly some people will use a HELOC. So there's a lot of ways to get there, even if you're not sitting on 200,000 in cash that you're ready to go deploy tomorrow.
Besides the buy-in for these franchises, can you explain a little bit more about the revenue structure, royalties, and what kind of returns are common and what could be expected?
Yeah, I'd say the returns oftentimes is dependent. Early on, are you paying someone else to run the business for you? That's semi-passive, like we talked about, or are you taking home, the full compensation yourself? So that definitely changes things. But it's eye-opening to people when they understand what some of these are kicking off. I mean, I've got clients that will do north of $1 million in their very first year in business. Others may take a little bit longer to ramp up, but I love seeing those case studies. I mean, we had multiple clients email me recently and they're like, "Hey, I did 950,000 in the first year. I did 1.2 million in the first year." On the revenue side, I'd say on the profitability side, oftentimes you're in the 15 to 20% range of revenue, right? So if you did $1 million business, let's say you invested 200,000, ran $1 million business, kicking off, we'll say 15%. Well, that's 150,000 to the bottom line, right? On an initial investment of 200,000. So year in, year out, if you're staying at that number and not growing, even let's say, that's a pretty good return when you think about it that way, from a percentage standpoint. And you're building an asset that one day you're going to be able to sell potentially. So you have that exit value too, and you get the tax benefits. It's what I call the trifecta. You get the cash flow, the exit, but you also get the tax benefits along the way, because government incentivizes real estate investors and business owners to do the activities that they do and create jobs and such. So there are a lot of things you can do tax-wise as an owner that you can't as a W-2, and that kind of goes into your total equation as well.
That just brought up another question for me, is being real estate minded. I'm thinking about, is this a cash exchange in the beginning, or can these investments be leveraged, small business loans or other types of business loans? Is that a viable option?
100%. No, the SBA loans I just mentioned are extremely common. Probably more than half of our clients will use SBA loans. You can always pay them back early, but of course the interest on those is tax deductible. So no, SBA loans for small businesses, very, very common. And it's interesting to point about the real estate. So I invest in real estate too, passive, directly, as well as I'm actually sitting in an Airbnb of ours right now taking this interview. But then I do a lot of syndications, and for me, it's an all of the above strategy. And that's what I'm seeing more and more, is real estate investors moving over to franchising and showing interest and getting involved, because I think I think it's a similar mindset. They enjoy the tax benefits, right? And now you get some active tax benefits. as an owner, but you also, right now there's or low inventory, high interest rates out there in the real estate market. So, some of the activity has slowed down. So we see real estate investors popping their head up and saying, what else is out there that kind of could make sense, and in some cases even complement what they're doing on the real estate side.
So then, is that given, say, that example you use, maybe $100,000 to $200,000 investment? How much is that out of pocket for the investor? And
so I'd say, let's say your all-in investment's around 200,000. You're probably putting 50,000 of cash into the business and then taking a loan for 150,000.
And that's not, I mean, that's not including reserves, or that's just, say, down payment, so to speak?
Oh no, that would be your all-in. Certainly, there's some that are higher than that, but that would be your all-in. Really, three things. One, your franchise fee, which would probably be around 50,000 upfront when you sign the agreement to buy the rights to go develop that territory and have their guidance and training and support along the way. And then it would include any startup costs that you have, kind of like one-time startup costs, for this or that. And then it would also include about 3 months of working capitals, what you're calling reserves, I think. So it kind of assuming you start cash flowing after 3 months, and you may want to pad that a little bit, right? But no, that's kind of how they look at it. And the franchisors will give a range, an investment range. I mean, they break out each component here in excruciating detail of here's what to expect going in. Certainly there are always surprises, but they usually give a lot of buffer within their numbers as well.
I mean, I have noticed, maybe more recently, in the last couple of years, a lot of talk about buying businesses, and I attribute the popularity to, and I could be completely wrong about this, but the attractiveness of Cody Sanchez. There are two assumptions there, of course, that she has that much sway, and I've never seen her because I don't know I don't know how attractive she is. But have you noticed a swing lately in more people coming to the franchise investing market? Is it becoming more popular?
Yeah, I'd say we're seeing as much interest as ever before. I think early on after COVID, I chalked some of that up to, hey, people have been sitting around thinking about the career path they're on and don't want to go back to the office, or they're ready to go blaze their own trail. But I think that may have kickstarted some things. I mean, we were doing a lot of deals before COVID, but I'd say it's only grown. I mean, Framebridge this past year was the 584th fastest growing company in the country. We made the Inc. 5000. And I just think that's a testimony to the growth that we've seen in recent years, largely due to people wanting to blaze their own trail. They want to put their own mark on things. In some cases, they want to leave a business to their kids. They want to build a legacy. Some cases, it's just, hey, I'm nervous about where the stock market is. I don't see a lot of good real estate deals. What other, I don't want to throw everything into crypto or what have you. And so they're saying, hey, gosh, they're wising up to the fact that business ownership can make a lot of sense for a lot of people.
So this is, as a consultant, you're helping, and I noticed, I did hear you mention brokering. Are you brokering these deals? Are you finding the brokers for, or is it all consulting? Just
Yeah, consulting is synonymous with brokering. So no, I'm brokering the deals, and our clients never pay us anything. So if they went directly to a franchise brand, or if they go through us, they're going to pay the same franchise fee. So it's a very nice, clean model. We simply get compensated with a referral fee on the back end from a franchise brand when a placement happens.
What about on the other side? Instead of being the investor, what about somebody's got a business, and do you consult with them on how to package this business to turn it into a franchise?
Great question. So, I'm a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, EOS. I get a lot of companies coming to me that say, hey, should we scale through franchising? And I'm always happy to have that conversation, Aaron. I don't personally hold the hand through the whole process of franchising the business. we've got a great partner company that does. They will put the FDD together and everything that you need to go. And then where I specialize is kind of on the helping them find new franchisees, right? And kind of brokering those deals. That being said, I love having those conversations with companies that are exploring franchising. And just having been a franchisor and a franchisee, I'm able to provide them with a lot of perspective. And part of my model going forward is I'd like to do more of that. Maybe become a small owner in the company, small minority equity holder. I've done that with a few companies, and it's worked out very well. And so, would love to do more of that.
Yeah, there's another local friend of mine has a great idea. He imports microbuses, VW microbuses, converts them into little rolling party buses with taps on the side and TVs that pop out of the roof. And he's turned that into a franchise. So he's doing this around the country, and it's lucrative. It's new, and I think it's a lower buy-in for that. But uh, it's just it was interesting how he came up with a good idea, and then put like his his brand, his logo to it, packaged it, and allow others to expand his business. So I was curious about that. Um, what when there are trends in the market? Have you seen just somebody invest into a franchise and it fail for no reason, no fault of the investor whatsoever? It's just that the bottom fell out of a particular market, or um, the particular franchise.
I'm trying to think of an example. Not where the franchisor fell out of the market. We did have, I can think of an example. We did have a client that got into a floor coating business that, um, they had a lot of things going on. They weren't able to put almost any time into the business, and it was one of those situations where everything that could go wrong went wrong. The guy they hired to be the manager ended up in the hospital, very early on, and so he was having to lean in to try to run the business. And I forget what happened with that same manager. Maybe tried to hire someone else. Anyway, long story short, he got about 3 or 4 months in and said, "Hey, this is going to be too much effort." And for what he was looking to do, and he had some other investments that were taken off, and he said, "I've got to hand this one back to the franchisor." Actually, I take that back. I think he sold it, but he probably took a haircut on it because it hadn't been fully developed. And so, I've seen a case or two like that, where maybe they didn't go in eyes wide open enough, or made assumptions that that manager was going to be the end all be all. Um, when those situations happen, you tend to point fingers too. And so he did point fingers at the franchisor. So that's what made me think of that example. He felt like their support was still, they were still building the plane some while it was in the air. Usually that's something that we're able to see coming. But in that case, his feedback was they still had things to figure out that would have helped him.
Hmm. We did talk about maybe a more trendy, uh, faddish, sexy businesses that franchises that could lose, drop in popularity. What are some examples of those unsexy uh, businesses that have just passed the test of time?
Yeah, things like insulation. That's a $50 billion industry. Most people can't name a company in that industry. It's highly fragmented. It's insulation, dumpsters, gutters, pressure washing. Things that, again, there's competition, but they're not doing a great job on the marketing side. They're not answering the calls when the phone rings. They don't have the technology stack. There's a business that I'm invested in called Art of Drawers that uses 3D technology to show a client, hey, in almost no time, like here's what your layout looks like for the kitchen. It's pull out shelving and such within your kitchen and pantry. It's different. And people that are aging in place, that's great for them. Provides them not only more space in their kitchens, but they also get better accessibility to it. So there's so many different little niches like that. I talked about the senior space. Well, we had clients in Boise, Idaho that recently came back. They had bought an in-home care, senior care business with us last year, and they came back and said, "Jon, what's a business that could complement that?" I introduced them to one that provides that builds out wheelchair ramps and stair lifts and bathroom mobility accessories, and so it's a great complement to their existing customer base. It allows them to really go deep. Um, Certainly with kids, it could be STEM education. I mentioned youth soccer, swim lessons, things that aren't top of mind. Pets. It's $100 billion plus pet industry out there, and people will spend on their pets. And so, things like ongoing grooming or doggy daycare. Things that you don't think of when you hear the F word franchise. And that's why I named my book Non-Food Franchising, because when people say franchise, they think fast food, and yet there's such a world of opportunity that exists outside of food.
It reminded me, I know of a businessman who has daycare facilities and dog kennel facilities. It's virtually the same thing.
Nice.
But yeah, all the people, all those customers act like parents, anyways. And I also want to know, like, if somebody's considering investing in a franchise, what are some of the questions they should answer for themselves or ask themselves before coming to say you?
Yeah, I think understanding if they have some degree of bandwidth within their lives to take this on. I think, understand, and maybe they don't, but maybe it could become a priority over something else. So I think a little bit of soul searching. I'd say, start looking around. What needs are there in your market? Are there things that are just obvious that are being underserved, or are there pockets of, too much competition? We like competition. That raises an awareness of, in an industry exists. Oftentimes you can beat the competition, but understanding kind of a little bit about the market without having to go into too much detail early on. But talk to friends and family and kind of get a feel. Certainly understanding on the financial side. If someone's net worth right now is below 150,000, I'd say let's save up till we at least get to that benchmark. That's not 150,000 in cash. That could include your home equity, but wait until you get to that place, because it may be too soon to buy a business otherwise. So, we want people to step into ownership when they're comfortable. There's always going to be some degree of nervousness, right? I mean, that's just goes with the territory. That's very normal, but you need to still be confident that you can take this on, and the timing's right. And the timing's never right to buy a business. There's always something that it could be improved upon. So I think it's having the courage to get past that, because there will always be an excuse to kick the can down the road and continue talking about it for a few more years. But so many people come to me and they say, "Hey, I've been thinking about this a long time. I recognize it's now or never. Let's go make a move."
It sounds very familiar. Yeah, coming from the real estate side. And what do you see for the future? What are you most excited about? What's up and coming?
Yeah, I love what I do, getting to help others, getting to open up their eyes, letting them have a light bulb moment to, hey, I never thought I'd be in this, but gosh, this makes a lot of sense. So, what validates me that I get excited about is when they come back and buy additional locations and additional territories, or they come back and buy additional brands, down the line, or they come back and refer their sister to me or what have you. That's when I know I'm doing a good job. And so, love that side of it. Love what I'm doing on the franchisee side, the brands that I'm involved in. Like I said, I'd love to do more consulting of, young emerging franchise brands. I just think there's a lot of wisdom that I can have learned some the hard way over the years I can impart to them. Just excited. I mean, you'll see negative news headlines about this or that in the economy, and I mean, those will always be there. They've been going on for over a decade. We've been talking about a recession, right? But when I see the economic activity firsthand in places like California and New York and areas that aren't getting a lot of positive news coverage, it gives me a lot of confidence for our country. I think the entrepreneurial spirit's alive and well, and we all know that that's what helped build the country.
We talked a little bit before we started recording, before the show, about the current political environment, does the current economy play a big factor in what's going on with franchises? And not to not to dive into politics itself, but uh, it doesn't matter who's in the White House, or what how would one administration or another have an effect on the business world in general?
Yeah, it's like when you look at the stock market under different Republican and Democratic parties over the years. I mean, there's not that much variance. I think there's always some initial shock whenever an election's over, but people have to keep doing and they keep needing the services that franchises and other businesses provide. So, I'd say certainly if it's a party that is more conservative, around their tax policy and stuff, you can point to that and say, hey, now is a great time to buy a business. In turn, you could look at another party that's less favorable on the tax side, and maybe they're more big government regulation type. And in some cases, people would say, "Well, gosh, I see what they're doing with this large corporation I'm working for, and there's fear of layoffs as a result of that, or they're instituting policies inside the company that I don't agree with. Maybe now I need to go do this on my own." So I think there's arguments to be made both ways. A lot of these businesses, like I said, are somewhat recession resilient. They're more needs based. Not every one of them, but quite a few of them. And no, there's definitely a psyche element. But again, I think regardless of who wins, it can provide some people with an excuse not to move forward and to kick the can down the road. It can provide others go-getters with reason to go move forward. So.
Do you own any franchises yourself?
Yeah. Primarily in the property services arena, but then the one I mentioned in Delray, Florida, is a business that's in the kind of in the foot space, and we use 3D printing to create custom orthotics like insoles for your feet. And we're not dedicated to the senior space, but that is kind of a sweet spot. So that's why we put it down in Delray.
That's great. Well, I think it's a good time to transition to our last segment, the countdown to impact. So I'm going to ask you for 3, 2, 1, all things that have had an impact in your life. 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person.
3 books. I would say The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It's the little steps you take on a daily basis that lead to those long-term results. I mean, it's kind of like Atomic Habits. Certainly the Bible, is the most important book in my life on multiple fronts. Third would be, somewhat of a disgraced basketball coach, Rick Pitino, at this stage, but he wrote a book called Success is a Choice that I read several times growing up, and I think that got me in the right mindset to go and tackle things that I was uncomfortable with. So those would be my 3. 2 quotes. One would be activity breeds activity. Again, you kind of heard that theme through my talking here, that if you get out there and start moving and quit talking and quit just thinking and pondering and contemplating, but if you start taking action in a direction, other things start opening up. That's been the story of my career and my personal life, everything. So activity breeds activity. And second would be, to whom much is given, much is expected. And that's just the idea around stewardship and, whether it be our time, whether it be our resources, whether it be our skills, I think looking beyond ourselves and how can we impact others is something that I carry and try to remind myself of every day. As far as 1 person, I would go back to my high school basketball coach. We went to a smaller school that played big schools, and he always pushed us harder than we thought we could go. And he said, we're going to be the hardest working team in the state of Georgia. And I truly believe that we were. And we ended up having results that weren't common results for a school our size. And so just his grind on a day-to-day basis and how he viewed things, I think that's where a lot of my work ethic came from. So I would point to him.
This is some great examples. I haven't heard about that success book. We'd have to...
written probably 30 years. Choice. Yeah, written probably 30 years ago. So it's a...
I'll have to look it up. Also, Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to mention also that the action, quote on action, it reminded me of one, and I'm always terrible with quotes, but uh, I always remember Benjamin Disraeli's quote: "Action doesn't guarantee happiness, but there is no happiness without action." It's very similar. Well, John, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with our audience. It definitely made an impact today. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about franchising in non-food businesses and just connect with you?
Yeah, come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com. That's FRAN bridgeconsulting.com. And share your email address. We'll reach out with links so you can download our book for free. Certainly, if you want to purchase it, all the profits go to Hope International, a great nonprofit that we support. But yeah, come visit our website and indicate in your message when you share the email address if you'd like to jump on a call and take a next step and learn a little bit more. Would be more than happy to jump on with you and we can talk through it.
Awesome. And thanks again.